Good evening. My name is Brian Konkol. I serve as Dean of Hendricks Chapel and Professor of Practice at Syracuse University, and welcome to Matters That Matter. This is an online conversation series where we amplify intentional conversation about religion, spirituality, values, belief, and motivation. We invite our guests to share about choices made, difficulties encountered, and commitments solidified. This evening, our guests are Justine Hastings and Ryan Golden. Hastings and Golden, both of the class of 2021, are the elected leaders of Syracuse University's Student Association's 64th legislative session, which spans the 2020-2021 academic year. Hastings, a secondary English education and English and textual studies dual major, is a longtime campus leader who recently earned the Unsung Hero Award at the university's 35th annual Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. celebration. Golden, who majors in policy studies, political science, and religion, has served within the Student Association for several semesters and in the University Senate as well. Welcome to Matters That Matter, President Hastings and Vice President Golden. Great to have you with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
So, Justine and Ryan, there is so much that can be said about leadership, and specifically how leadership brings with it a significant number of joys and also a significant number of challenges. And yet, in the midst of it, you have both taken on the call to leadership. I'm wondering, Justine, why don't we start with you? What is it that inspired you to take on your current leadership role as president? And then Ryan, will go to you as vice president. What inspired you to take on these leadership roles?
Well, I know that we ran for Student Association for 3 specific reasons. To be in positions to hold and keep the upper administration accountable, especially because of what happened last year with Nottingham SU, to pursue initiatives that the student body needs, and to have access to the real decision makers of the university, the Board of Trustees. But overall, and it encompasses all of these reasons, we took on this role in order to support our fellow students, especially those who need it the most.
Thank you. Ryan.
I knew I wanted to serve in this role for a while. It wasn't originally my intention to be the vice president. I ran for president over a year ago. But I knew I wanted to be a leader on this campus due to the fact that when I joined SA, I saw how important they were to the university and how much they were able to accomplish if they were able to get their goals in front of the right person and if they were able to be strategic about their goals. And I saw the ability that we had to affect change for students, not just by students, but to benefit them as well. And so Justine and I agreed to run, and I was happy that we did.
So, looking at the Student Association, it talks about striving to create a university community, and this is a direct quote, where the needs of students are met, the rights of students are represented, and the voice of the student is heard. Now, we recognize that there's many different Syracuse University students with different perspectives and identities and so on and so forth. We recognize that, but for someone who's unfamiliar with the Syracuse University community and unfamiliar with the Syracuse University student body, how would you describe the student body at Syracuse University? Ryan, why don't we start with you, and then we'll go up to Justine after that.
Definitely diverse in thought. I would say that in terms of diverse in thought, but activism runs through every person here. I think that when it comes to this Syracuse University student body, we've got a lot of people who came here for various reasons, but I do think that at the end of the day, they want to impact something and they want to change something, whether it be just on our campus or out in the world. And so I think that when you play to that, when it comes to our campus, you'll get a terrific response.
I would definitely agree with Ryan in that almost every student I've come across has just wanted to change something for the better or based on what they believe. Um, like you said, there's just so many different perspectives and identities. But if I did have to describe the student body, I'd say that they're enthusiastic, they're innovative, they're active, determined, driven, vibrant. I mean, that's what Orange is. Um, I genuinely believe we wouldn't have had a lot of the positive changes we've had this year without last year's student demonstrations, which were a collective student effort. And even currently as we speak, we have brave Black drama students in that department demanding much needed implementations. So the amazing work amongst the student body never stops, and Ryan and I are really honored to serve the student body.
This particular week, we're talking a lot about mental health and your leadership, amongst many others, coming together for Mental Health Awareness Week. Could you share a little bit more about your motivation working with others to bring this program to the campus community, and perhaps a little bit about what you're hoping to accomplish this week? Justine, why don't we start with you and then we'll go to Ryan.
Yes, so we're honored to host Student Association's 5th annual Mental Health Awareness Week and to work along our Student Life Committee to organize these events. So we were really motivated to do this week because we acknowledge that this time has just been difficult for so many people for so many reasons, whether it's dealing with anxiety or change or uncertainty or loss. And the purpose of the week is just to create open and honest dialogues about mental health, its intersections, and the stigmas surrounding it. And it's a reminder for everybody that it's okay to just, take a step back, breathe, not be okay. That is perfectly fine too, just to be human. And to remember that, you're not alone, that you have a whole campus community here to support you. So that was the goals and motivation for the week.
Thank you. Ryan.
Yeah. I've seen Mental Health Awareness Week from SA's perspective for a few years. I was a part of SA for the first 2 years of my time here. It's important to acknowledge mental health in terms of making sure that people have access to it, and not just based on socioeconomic statuses, well, that's important, but also trying to break down stigma around it. There's a huge problem when it comes to us as students, us as citizens, not really willing to recognize each other's battles that we don't see. And, we don't, for some reason, we've come to the idea that we can't trust someone else's own account of their own life and their own feelings. And that seems to be pretty, in my opinion, just unproductive and pretty arrogant of us to assume that we know better how someone's feeling than they do. But when it comes to mental health, we've, for some reason as a society, embraced that, oh, you're not really depressed, you just need this. And you're not really anxious, you just need to go take that test and you'll be fine. That sometimes those can, things can be parts that add on to it, but there is an underlying problem. And I think it's also understanding that you can have an issue that is related to mental health that is not only going to be solved by medicine. For some people, the way to help their mental health is to go and talk to a person of faith and go to talk to someone who is a man of God and sit down and have a conversation about their anxieties or what's ailing them, and then that helps. Understanding that everyone's got their own prescription and everyone's got their own needs is, I think, the first step to really battling this.
I love the way that you're talking about taking seriously people's experience and for us, taking seriously what education is about and recognizing that our education is more than just acquiring information, right? But it's also about, yes, doing well, but also being well. And I think for those of us that have worked with the Student Association and on this and other cases, it's just been really inspiring to see this work because it's important work. I wanted to remind our viewers, whether you're joining us here directly on the Zoom webinar platform or whether you're tuning in on Facebook Live, this is a great opportunity to engage with our Student Association President and Vice President. So if you have comments, if you have questions, please, please, please write those in. So again, whether you're directly here on the Zoom webinar platform or joining us on Facebook Live, please type those in. And the staff from Hendricks Chapel will get those questions to me, and I will do my very best to get those questions to the president and vice president who have so wonderfully joined us here this evening. So please, let's take advantage of this opportunity to hear directly from our student leaders. You talked a little bit about some of the ways in which we engage in terms of mental health. And I know for me, one of the things we talk about at Hendricks Chapel is how is it that we find a sense of belonging for our students? How is it that we create, spark, and sustain belonging? And I wanted to share with you this article and this quote that we received from our colleague Varun Soni at the University of Southern California, who was a guest on this program just a few weeks ago. He wrote an op-ed at the Los Angeles Times, and he talked about what he calls a loneliness crisis, which I find to be really striking. He says there's a loneliness crisis on our college campuses. And there's a particular quote that he says that I want to read back to you. He says, whereas students used to ask, how should I live? They are now more likely to ask, why should I live? Where they used to talk about hope and meaning, now they grapple with hopelessness and meaningless. Every year, it seems I encounter more stress, anxiety, and depression, and more students in crisis on campus. So, Justine and Ryan, I'm wondering, would you agree with Dean Soni's assessment that there is a loneliness crisis on campus? And if so, how do you believe we in higher education, whether it's myself as an administrator or yourself as student leaders, how is it that we engage with this crisis? Justine, let's start with you, if that's okay, and then we'll go to Ryan after that.
Thank you. I would say that a loneliness crisis definitely exists. Even before COVID-19, I've served as a resident advisor, and I noticed feelings of loneliness and isolation among students, especially first years who are going to college and are in new environments for the first time. And of course, these feelings are heightened now due to COVID-19 because of quarantining and social distancing. So in regards to the latter half of your question of how higher education leadership can help, I would definitely say looking into peer-to-peer mentor programs. What's so special about them is that due to the small age difference, the mentees feel like they're truly relating and connecting with their mentor who's undergoing or went through similar experiences as them. And this makes the student feel like, they aren't alone in their feelings of loneliness because they have someone there who can relate to that. I am personally a huge fan of peer-to-peer mentoring programs. And before I was in SA, I was involved in so many that if you're a student, I recommend checking out like the Tayshoff Center's Inclusive U program or the Fusion program at the LGBT Resource Center or the Center for Learning and Student Success academic coaching program. So I could say that I firsthand witnessed the positive effects in how they improve student belonging. So I highly recommend that. And another way higher education leadership can help with that is kind of, the quote was speaking about meaning, finding meaning. And I know that finding meaning looks different to different people. I know that for many, it can be, being productive and serving towards a higher cause, whether that's just serving your fellow human being or pursuing something you care about. So just providing different avenues and ways for students to pursue that as well.
Oh, thank you for that. Ryan.
I think that, in my own opinion, I would say that we need to focus more on, we need to focus a lot on changing our culture when it comes to interacting with people. Like Justine said, she was an RA and I was not. We worked together as RAs in Flint Hall, And so, you would assume that like the general idea of being lonely is that you don't have anyone around you, which if you're an RA, that's definitely never true. But you can still end up being lonely because the question for me and for many others, I suffer with depression. So for me, when I think about me being lonely, it's not about me being literally alone in a space. It's about not feeling like anyone's going to be there through whatever struggle I'm currently working with, that I'm the only one involved in it. I'm the only one concerned with it. And I think that what Justine suggested with peer-to-peer mentoring is important, and that's one way that if that avenue is going to work for you, take it. But I think that I want us to do that, but I also want us as a society to realize that this is going to be on us to change our culture. That, we've come to this point where we've taken this tone of your problems are your problems and my problems are my problems, so I don't want to concern myself with anything you've got on your plate. And that can make people very, feeling hopeless and lonely, because if they've got something that they need help with, or at least need someone to hold their hand while they go through this, we as a society should be more willing as individuals to be there for them.
I really appreciate your comments, Justine and Ryan. I think that there's at least what I feel like I'm hearing here is this wonderful recognition about the ways in which we rely upon one another in the human community, that in so many ways we've been taught that we're independent and, all these words with self as a prefix, but yet in these times that we're shown how much we do rely on one another and need each other to become ourselves. And I so appreciate your sense of this. And I think that you've really put your fingers on the pulse of the heartbeat of campus here, and that how is it that we help people to connect with one another, and that in many ways that's one of the best promises we can give to one another, is the promise that someone else is going to be there to journey with you. And that's such powerful commentary. As I thinking about this time and this sense of connectivity, finding the sense of community, we recognize whether it's COVID-19, whether it's anti-Black racism, whether it's a number of different crises that are facing the human community in Syracuse, in the state of New York, the United States of America, and beyond. One of the things that I have found striking right now is how it is that we engage with grief, sorrow, and loss. Grief, sorrow, and loss. There's an organization called Actively Moving Forward, and they study grief, sorrow, and loss amongst 18 to 22-year-olds. And what I found was that nearly 30% of all traditional age college students are experiencing the loss of a family member or a close friend over the last year, 30%. And of course, in addition to that, we know that there's many others dealing with countless different forms of loss, from employment to opportunity and so on and so forth, various tragic, life-altering events. So I'm wondering, from your perspective as the vice president and as the president of the Student Association, what counsel could you give to other students about resources as they are dealing with loss and grief and sorrow? I forget which order I was going in. I was going Justine first and then Ryan. Justine, thank you.
I think I did go first the last time, but I did want to field this question just because, with Mental Health Awareness Week, we've been handing out resources all week. And it's interesting that you asked this, because there is a group therapy at the Barnes Center that's dedicated specifically to COVID-19 grief and loss. It's dedicated to collectively identifying, acknowledging, and processing grief and loss experiences related to COVID-19. And I also understand that maybe some students might prefer individual counseling, and that's an option too. So I would just strongly suggest checking out the Barnes Center and checking out their resources at the website's esc.syr.edu/bewell. And they have that 24-hour confidential line that you could find on your website. And I really highly recommend using that. Thanks.
Oh, thank you.
I would say the same thing as Justine. I mean, I've had loss in my life. It's something that that every person's gonna go through at some point. And I think that having the network around you that's going to be there to support you when that happens is important. I think that we offer resources here that, you know, as a university can help you and can, help you make sense of it and find peace with it. I think that those are two most important aspects of it. Yeah, that's really where I come from on this. I don't know if I have anything else to add to what Justine said, but yeah.
Oh, thank you. I was looking at the Mental Health Awareness Week schedule and your various forms of emphasis, and talk about a couple different things here. The first, self-care, and then mental health for marginalized communities, and then forming healthy habits, and then mental health and the arts, and then finally mental health and the outdoors. Could you two share a little bit about how these areas were chosen, if you will, and perhaps how you're hoping that students who participate in these programs and services might be impacted by them? So again, number one, how did you come up with these areas of emphasis? And number two, what's the impact that you're hoping to have on students who engage with these programs? Ryan, why don't we start with you, and we'll go back to Justine after that.
Yeah, we think that we used a lot of the themes that we've tried to use over the past few years, but also trying to expand on them with things that have come up more recently and things that we should be focusing on, I think, as a campus and as a microcosm of the world that we live in. And I'm not as involved in the planning of Mental Health Awareness Week. How Justine and I usually work is that we separate the two. We separate projects that we work on, but I've been somewhat involved in this, and I think that when it comes to Mental Health Awareness Week, the way that we decided what was important was we tried to see what campus was struggling with when it came to mental health awareness and tried to highlight the different areas that have most impacted us as a campus. I don't know, Justine probably has more to give to this specifically.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. I was going to say that over the summer, we formed the Mental Health Awareness Week Planning Committee because a lot of planning had to go into it before the school year started because it's kind of early in the year. So the areas that we chose were, we chose these areas because mental health is just so broad, and we just kind of wanted to explore like different specific categories with it. And so for the first, I could go through like each one and just say something about why that was chosen.
Please do. Please do.
Thank you. So the first day was self-care. And even self-care in and of itself is very broad, and it means so many different things to so many different people. And like, that's really awesome. And the second day was mental health for the marginalized. And that's because we wanted to address that marginalized communities could face even more severe forms of mental health conditions due to unmet needs, stigmas, and barriers. And then the third day was forming healthy habits. And that was to address the mind and body connection. I think when you're stressed and consumed, it's really easy to focus on one and not the other. And so we just kind of wanted to address that. For the fourth day, it was mental health in the arts. So we wanted to address that people use art to process how they're feeling. And we wanted to provide ways, creative ways for students to be mindful. And then last but not least, and it's tomorrow's theme, is mental health in the outdoors. So it's encouraging folks to just be outside and enjoy nature, whether that's something as simple as taking a walk or doing something more effortful like hiking. Being outdoors can be like really refreshing, especially during these times. So, and Syracuse is so beautiful and scenic. So we just wanted to encourage people to enjoy their time outside in a safe way.
We're talking about habits. I'm going to pick up on that in a moment from the question that just came in from Catherine Newton. Thank you, Catherine, for joining us. We're going to take your question. I'm thinking about habits, and that we, of course, are creatures of habit, and we think about reaching out to others who are struggling. We have the classic ways, like I'm gonna hold you by the hand and take a walk, or I'm going to give you a hug, or I'm going to do something, what of course right now, some of those methods have been removed as a result of COVID-19 and our need to be physically separated from one another. So the question that comes in from Catherine, and again, thank you so much, Catherine, for this question, is from your point of view, what are some ways that we can adapt our personal support for one another? In other ways, with all that's going on with these struggles around mental health, depression, anxiety, illness, from your point of view as student leaders, how can we be with each other when we can't be within 6 feet of each other? What are some strategies that you would be able to share for the rest of us about providing support for students in the context of physical separation? Whoever wants to take it, please go ahead.
Hi, I'll take it, especially because I know Professor Newton. Hello. It's good to see you virtually and interact with you virtually. To answer this question, and it's an interesting one because I recently had this conversation. It's going to seem unrelated right now, but I'm going to tie it back together. I was having a conversation with a few administrators on how to best support students after the election, because of course, because of how polarizing it is, no matter what outcome it is, there will be students who are upset or who are struggling with the results. So just how faculty or administrators can best support students during that time. And what I'd say is it ties to this because I think what we all could do no matter what time it is just kind of be mindful of like things or events that are happening outside of the classroom that can have an impact on a student's performance, and just trying to and I'm not one to tell a professor how to instruct their course, but I would say just be mindful of that and kind of lighten the load and just acknowledge that there are things going on outside of the classroom that are going to have an impact on students, whether it's national or whether it's like individual, if students come from backgrounds where they might have a lot on their plate just because of their circumstances. So to answer the question of how to, best adapt your support in this time is just, being mindful. I feel like communication always works, just being even able to ask, like, how are you doing? And just kind of going off of that. Yeah.
Thank you. Ryan, anything you wanted to offer?
I would just say to be present and to listen. I think that you can still do that from 6 feet apart or via call or email. People are going to be going through a lot, and they have been since, February. I think that what we need to be doing is trying to be understanding that we're all going through something that we've never seen before, and there's no playbook for. I've made mistakes, and I've needed help, and I think that, now is not the time for tough love. Now is the time for understanding. Now is the time for, listening to someone when they say that they need help and that when they're asking for a little bit of deference. I think that's what I'd give to anyone. That's the best way to help students, faculty, staff, anyone.
Oh, thank you. I shared a lot of these questions with you beforehand. That's why I feel comfortable asking you this one. That's a little more personal, I suppose, about how it is that you handle your own mental health. And so I thank you for agreeing to engage with this question. The two of you carry with you a great deal of responsibility. You are president and vice president of the Student Association in the midst of, we can go through the list, unprecedented times, uncertain times, important times. So I'm curious, how do you care for your own heart? How do you care for your own spirit and soul? What does that look like for you? Whoever wants to go first.
Justine, do you want to? Okay. So, like I said, I've had depression for a while. So for me, I rely on, the help of doctors and prescription when it comes to that. But I do think that there's also just activities that can help me unwind and just relax, I guess is the way to put it, to calm down. I think that for me, it's mainly just being around people and talking with people and trying to, take my mind off of anything that's, going wrong, or focus my mind on something that's going well. So trying to do that really helps me work through anything that I've got going on in terms of my mental health, and really helps me refocus and recharge. Um, I'm definitely an extrovert, so when it comes to that, these past few months have definitely been hard, but I've still found ways to make it work.
Thanks, Ryan. Justine.
Thank you. And I really love this question, and that's why I was like so excited for the first day of Mental Health Awareness Week and forming it around self-care and what it looks like to different people, because like I said, it looks different for so many different people. So what I like to do is that I like to meditate. Either I do it silently or I use this guided meditation video. I usually go to YouTube for that. I like to draw, even though I'm not really artistically talented in that way. It just makes me calm down. And I honestly center my self-care around just being a good friend to myself. So like whenever I'm feeling down, I just like ask myself, what would a good friend say to you right now? What would they suggest that you do? And then I follow suit. Um, I also like to make time for my family or my friends, especially to just get my mind off of what's stressing me, which is probably work or school. And something specific that I've been doing on my own is I've recently been watching this show on Netflix called Girlfriends that I love. So just even something as simple as like kicking back and watching Netflix and eating your favorite food is forms of self-care. So.
Thank you. One of the things that we've been talking about throughout these Matters That Matter programs over these last few months is what are some of the consequences of crisis. We've talked about crisis can give birth to clarity. Crisis can spark creativity. Crisis can call us to action. Crisis can build coalitions. There's a number of different things that crisis can give birth to. The title of this program, Matters That Matter, is an opportunity for us to have conversations about matters that matter so that we can change the way that we relate to one another. I'm wondering, Justine and Ryan, as we come to the conclusion of our program here together, is thinking about what has become clearer to you over these recent months and what you hope can become more clear to our other students. So first of all, I want to thank you so much for being with us this evening. It is just a joy and a pleasure to be with such extraordinary student leaders. And again, this final question that we have for you, what has become more clear for you, and what do you hope can become more clear for others? Ryan, why don't we go for you, and then Justine will finish off with you.
I would say probably my support network, my network of friends and family, the importance of self-care and the importance of taking time for yourself and being, with you. I watched, Justine was talking about watching TV. As a former self-care, I tend to do that as well. I was watching this show where a man was talking about how for his employees, it was a show about one of the former directors of the FBI, and he said that he would always leave the office by 6, which is unheard of for someone that high up in government. But he did that because he wanted the people under him to do the same, because he wanted them to go home and recharge and be with the ones that they loved, and that made them be better decision makers and better employees. And I take the same approach with myself. If I stay in the office all day, I'm not going to get anything done that's going to probably get the best outcome. And I think that me being just a person, I think that I need to be around the people who make me happy and who I can, also make happy. And yeah, involving yourself in that network is always important. And I think that for me, that became more clear, and especially those people who are in that network for me became more clear.
Thank you.
So I find this question interesting because something that recently became clear to me is something that you actually spoke about at the student leadership retreat. Um, and you spoke about how we're all truly in this together and how we're all connected. And it reminded me of this essay I read by Kathleen Dean Moore. It's called The Parables of the Rats and Mice. And she makes this point about how everything is connected. And she uses this imagery of a stone dropping into a lake and how the ripples spread out into widening circles. And it's basically about how every decision we make and every action we take or don't take has spreading consequences in the world. Um, and I just couldn't help but think about the recent months and times, even with COVID-19. And a perfect example of this is the recent university-wide announcement about the serious rise in positive COVID cases. And it's awful, that event happened and that there's this rise in COVID cases. So I hope it became clear to me, and I hope that it becomes clear to my fellow students that everything we do has an impact on each other.
Thank you. And again, it was a joy to visit with you a couple weeks ago for that retreat. I wanted to thank you for that opportunity. And I wanted to thank you for taking time out of what I know are very busy schedules for the two of you as leaders on this campus. And I want to thank our viewers for joining us this evening for Matters That Matter. For those that have questions after the fact, we do post these videos to our Facebook archive. And so if you want to share this video with loved ones, please feel free to do so. And also, if you have some follow-up questions, please feel free to email us at chapel@syr.edu. And if you have questions for the president and vice president who are with us, we'll make sure that we get them to them. So Justine, Ryan, thank you so much, not just for this evening, but for all of your incredible leadership. And to all of our viewers, thank you so much for this time together on Matters That Matter. No matter where you are here in Syracuse, around the state, country, or world, we wish you nothing but the best. So may you be healthy, may you be happy, and may you be hopeful today and always. Thanks. Have a great night. God bless.